Thank you, everybody, again for joining us. As you can probably imagine, variants of concern have been a big consideration for us over the last little while. And I believe I showed you this graph last time, really comparing what the United Kingdom has gone through compared to Ontario. And I showed several other international comparisons where you saw a big spike leading to a third wave after regions reopened at a relatively high rate and gave opportunity for those variants to start to spread. And we're starting to see it in Canada as well. Most notably was the example I showed with Newfoundland here, but we're also starting to see small upticks in some of the other provinces. If we take a look at what's happening with daily cases here in Ontario, this is really the pattern that we are seeing. I pointed out last time that we were just starting to see a little bit of flattening last week, and we're very much seeing that that is flattened out, and there might be a small increase here in the Ontario daily cases. Just to show you what the influence of the variance here is, I'm just going to overlay this graph now, subtracting the variance to see what the pattern would be if we didn't have the variance circulating. And then that looks something like that. And so you can see that there's a bit of a sharper uptick thanks to the variance. That difference there you're seeing is really about the variance. And there's a little bit of a reporting lag of the provincial numbers. February 3rd was the point where the province started to routinely test every sample for the variance. And you can, I think, kind of get the appreciation here that the variants are basically picking up steam a little bit. That line isn't just going in a linear fashion. It is slowly starting to accelerate. And if we go to the daily cases, I think you can get an even better sense of that here in Ontario, where it's a little bit noisy. This is a 3-day rolling average just to try and smooth that out. But you can see that every day we seem to be seeing more and more variants being reported in the province as part of the daily case count. In Niagara, we had 6 positive screens for the variant at that time. And this is what it looks like over time. This is the dates where we initially reported the case, and then a few days later, we find out it's a variant. I'm tracing it back to the date the case was actually originally reported to us as a positive COVID case, not the few days later when we found out it was a variant. But these were the 6 cases that we had back last week when we talked. And what's happened since that last week looks kind of like this. We are actually, as of now, up to 33 cases. Last couple of days, we haven't seen anything, but that's again because of provincial reporting delay. It's usually 2 or 3 days after we reported a case, we'll find out if it's a variant or not. Now, this is kind of what we're looking at. And every day, you know, a proportion of our cases that's a variant has gone up, and we're now upwards of 15%. If we didn't have the variants, you can see we might still actually be on a small downward trend, but the variants have the difference between us continuing on a downward trend and us actually having flattened out. And just to show you what these numbers actually boil down to in terms of statistics. So if we're looking at all our cases, we have a reproductive number just about 1, which is perfectly consistent with us being flat. And we, of course, have a large doubling time. If we take out the variance, we actually see our reproductive numbers below 1. And that's consistent with us still seeing a small decrease in our non-variant cases. If we're looking then at the variants, you can see that the reproductive number of the variants is quite high. They are growing quickly, and their doubling time is 4.4 days, which is consistent with exponential growth. Every 4.5 days, we seem to be doubling the number of variants that we have. Caution, of course, is that we're dealing with relatively small numbers here, so these numbers could be a little bit exaggerated just because of that. But I think it's overall clear that the variants are now what are driving our cases flattening out as opposed to continuing the decline that we were seeing earlier. Now, I talked about how in Niagara, we're at about 16% of our cases are now variants. In the province, it's over 20%. The Ontario Science Table released their latest modeling last Thursday, and this is what they are projecting is, you know, what they've seen and what they're projecting. And they're saying that that provincial number will go from being about 20% to about 40% in the second week of March. And of course, next week is the second week of March. And so these are coming up very quickly on top of us.